Before Venus, before Ishtar, there was Inanna, the queen of heaven, the goddess of love and of war. Her name was carved in clay 5,000 years ago. Her power echoed in palaces, temples, and battlefield prayers. And her most famous journey was one of death. She was not born in a single myth or shaped by one culture. Inanna evolved across generations, across the hearts of thousands. She was sung to by priestesses in high temples and invoked by warriors before battle. Her duality wasn't a flaw. It was divine design. Inanna emerged from ancient Sumer around 3500 BCE, long before Zeus ruled Olympus or Yahweh spoke from Sinai. Her name meant Lady of Heaven. She ruled Venus, the morning and evening star. She brought fertility, desire, storms, and blood. She was not a passive goddess. She pursued power. Scholars believe Inanna may have started as a local deity in Uruk before her cult expanded across Sumer. Her identification with Venus was not coincidental. Venus, the brightest celestial body after the sun and moon, rises and falls in cycles, just as Inanna's myths echo cycles of power and surrender. Inanna's worship was centralized in the city of Uruk, one of the world's first urban centers. Her temple, the Inanna, stood as a spiritual and political core. Rituals invoked her for love, war, kingship, and crop growth. High priestesses, like the poet Enheduanna, wrote hymns that still survive today. Inanna was not just a goddess. She was an idea of passion, ambition, and sacred chaos. The Inanna precinct was more than stone. It was a political powerhouse, a center of education, astronomy, and law. Priestesses of Inanna held significant influence, often working directly with kings. This temple complex influenced the idea of sacred kingship. Rulers claimed their authority through divine marriage to the goddess herself. Her most famous myth begins not in triumph, but in death. Inanna decides to descend into the land of the dead, the underworld ruled by her sister, Ereshkigal. She removes a piece of clothing at each of the 7 gates. Naked, vulnerable, the Queen of Heaven arrives stripped of power. And then she dies. Her corpse hangs on a hook. 3 days pass. The gods weep. Then Enki, god of wisdom, sends help. Inanna returns, reborn, but never the same. The tale is poetic and brutal. With each gate she passes, Inanna surrenders a piece of her identity: crown, necklace, breastplate. Each represents an aspect of her earthly power. The descent is spiritual, symbolic, and terrifying. Her sister, Ereshkigal, does not embrace her. She condemns her. This is no reunion. This is annihilation. But death in myth is never the end. Not for a goddess. What does Inanna's story mean? Some see the descent as symbolic of death and rebirth. Others see it as a ritual of ego death, inner transformation, or even trauma. She is passion personified, but never safe. She seduces lovers and destroys kings. She is both protector and annihilator, a divine mirror reflecting the storm within us all. Inanna's myths have been reinterpreted by depth psychologists like Carl Jung and feminist thinkers alike. She embodies transformation, the descent into the shadow self, confrontation with mortality, and return with new wisdom. For some, she represents the journey of every soul facing trauma. The fall, the void, and the climb back toward light. As Sumer faded, Inanna was reborn as Ishtar in Akkad, Babylonia, and Assyria. Her myths shifted. New kings invoked her in war. She became both patroness and weapon. Later, the Greeks reimagined her as Aphrodite. The Romans called her Venus. Her symbols scattered across civilizations like embers. But the core remained: desire, power, transformation. Ishtar inherited much of Inanna's mythos, but emphasized her martial aspect. Temples to Ishtar were found from Nineveh to Mari. Unlike the more passive goddesses of later mythologies, Inanna continued to demand reverence, worship, and fear. Even when her name changed, her fire did not fade. She burned into legend. Today, Inanna is studied as one of the oldest deities ever recorded. She has inspired poets, psychologists, artists, and mystics. She is the goddess who dared to descend and rise again. A myth not of peace, but of change, of power's price, of the dark roads we all walk to return brighter. In modern times, Inanna has become a symbol for personal empowerment, shadow work, and feminine complexity. Artists, poets, and spiritual practitioners still invoke her name. She is not merely an artifact of history. She's an archetype, a living myth. Her story reminds us that death is not the end, that love is not always soft, and that power must sometimes descend to rise again. If the myth of Inanna moved you, there's more where this came from. Subscribe to Lore Eternal for the greatest stories ever told reborn. Join us as we uncover more forgotten goddesses, ancient heroes, and timeless myths.